Sahanau punaktu sahaviryam karavavahai tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Shruti Smriti Purananam Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavad-pada Shankaram Lokashankaram Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Badarayanam Sutra Bhashya Kritau Vande Bhagavantau Punah Punah. Hari Om, Hari Om. So, na tada devata jivam atma shabdena avidadhyat. To that we have seen. So, if some inert matter called pradhanam, if that was the source of the world, the material for the world, then you can't say that inert material became this conscious being. You see. The scripture says the source itself, the source of everything itself enters the body as the subject, the perceiver of the world. You see, that's a very big statement. The very source of the universe enters this body, enters the eyes and ears and the mind as a conscious being. Now, if the source of the universe were some inert matter, how can the inert matter enter this body as a conscious being? Inert matter can become the inert world, all right. Inert matter can become, we just pull it, it's loud, Okay. Inert matter can become the inert world, all right, at best. I mean, that is also not acceptable. You can say this much, the inert became the inert. Okay. But how can the inert become the inert, enter the body as a conscious being? Therefore, if the source itself became the observer, if the source itself became the observer of the creation, if the source of the universe itself became the observer of the universe through the eyes and ears, etc., then definitely that source cannot be inert. It has to be conscious. Therefore, the material with which the whole matter is made, that material cannot be inert matter. It has to be consciousness. This is the argument that the Siddhanta is giving. Then he continues, Jivo hi nama chetana. When you say this individual, when you really look at this person, the person is a person only as long as he is conscious. We call him a person as long as he is conscious, only on the basis of consciousness. When he is conscious, we call him a person. And if there is no consciousness, if the eyes don't function, ears don't function, if the consciousness has withdrawn its identification with the body, if the consciousness has withdrawn its identification with the body, then the body is dead. We don't call it a person. We don't burn a person. We don't burn a person. You have to be a terrorist to burn a person. But not in this country at least. We don't burn persons. And therefore we burn a body. And you don't even call it a body. In fact, the body is a body only when the person, the conscious person is there in the body. We call it a body. But once that identification with the body is withdrawn, then it is not even either a person nor even the body. Strictly speaking, it's not a body. It's a thing. It's a thing to be disposed of as soon as possible. It's a thing to be disposed of. And therefore here Bhashyakara Shankaracharya says, my dear, Jivo hi nama chetana. Jivo hi nama chetana. Jiva is a conscious being. Sharir Adhyaksha. Who is this person? He is in control of the body. He presides over the body. The body doesn't preside over the conscious being, but the conscious being presides over the body. Body doesn't use the person. The person uses the body. The one who uses, he is the presider over. What is used is presided over. Therefore, this conscious being is Adhyaksha. Adhyaksha means the one who presides over the body. Like the householder presides over the house, meaning he uses that setup. The setup doesn't use the person. The person uses the setup. As the user of the setup is the Adhyaksha, is the president. The president means the one who presides over the conscious being. So he is Sharir Adhyaksha, is a conscious being. Prananam Dharayata. He is also the one. He uses the breath to stay in the body, to stay in identification with the body. I use the breath to stay alive. I use the breath to stay alive means I use the breath to stay in identification with the body. To stay in identification with the body. In that manner, Jiva is Prananam Dharayata. In fact, the very faculties are supported by the Jiva. He is a Dharayata. He is the supporter of the senses. As long as I am there, eyes are there. When I withdraw my identification with the body, eyes close, ears close. The faculties just die. The brain dies. That means even brain is supported by the conscious being. We think, differently. A layman thinks differently. He says, when there is a brain, man is alive. When the brain is, the person is. When the brain is gone, the person is gone. This is how we think. But here the scripture says, as long as the conscious being is in identification with the form, as long as that conscious being is there in identification with the body, so long is the brain, so long are the faculties, so long are the senses. When the identification is withdrawn, when the identification is totally withdrawn, then there are no faculties. Like when a man falls asleep, he withdraws his identification with the body. To fall asleep is to withdraw your equation with the body. It's like you resign in an office, you resign your job in an office. It means you withdraw your identification with the office. You withdraw. When you withdraw from a given office, you do it deliberately. You do it deliberately. But sleep, one doesn't sleep deliberately. One can deliberate and lie down on the bed. One can deliberately lie down on the bed. Are you able to follow? One can use one's will. One can use one's deliberation. One can decide, let me lie down. Therefore, lying down is one's decision. But falling asleep is not one's decision. You don't decide and fall asleep. It just happens. But whether it happens deliberately or otherwise, the identification with the body is withdrawn in sleep. When the identification is withdrawn, the eyes don't see, ears don't see, here mind doesn't think. All faculties simply become, zero. Now who supports whom? Do the faculties support the observer, or the observer supports the faculties? We think really the faculties support the person. The faculties don't support the person. The person means, I am using the word person in the sense of the conscious being, the truth, the observing truth, minus the identification of the observer with the body. The faculties don't exist. That's why here Bhashyakara says, the supporter of the faculties is defining the person. Who is this person? Who is this jiva? Says this jiva is Chetanaha, is a conscious being. Number one. Number two, and he is Sharira Adhyaksha. He is using the body. Wherever there is noun-adjective relation, you can't use the word Adhyaksha. Very important thing. Very important clue to what these scriptures, what this language wants to convey. A very important clue. I can't say the tree presides over its qualities. The tree doesn't, because once you say tree, it includes all qualities. Tree is not using qualities. The word tree, the definition of the tree includes all qualities. They all form a part of the tree. Adjectives form a part of the noun. Adjectives are a part of the noun. They qualify the noun. But Here we are saying this conscious being is Adhyaksha of this body. Sharira Adhyaksha. He presides over the body, means he makes use of the body. There is a user-used relation. To begin with. That's not the fundamental relation. The immediate, intelligible relation, understandable relation, the immediate, understandable relation between the conscious being and the body is, there is a user-used relation. The one who is using the body is Adhyaksha. What is used is Adhisthita. You see, it is used, presided over. How can the presided over be an attribute of the one who presides over? What is presided over cannot be an attribute, an adjective of the one who presides over. The used, what is being used, cannot be an attribute of the one who uses. Because between noun and adjective, there is no user-used relation. Therefore, we can't, mechanically say that body is an adjective of the person, is a part of the person. Body is not a part of us because we are using it. Like we use a house, Bhagavan says also. The house we use is not a part of us because we are using it. You see, clothes we are using. We use the clothes. Vasansi jirnani. Bhagavan gives that example of. I use the clothes, then throw it away. It can't be a part of me. In the same manner, the conscious being is using the body, and therefore the conscious being is Adhyaksha. This is second point. The third point is Prananam Dharayata. This is a correction. The conscious being is not supported by the faculties and the brain. The conscious being is only using the brain. Upadhi supports the brain. It is only as long as conscious being is there in identification with the body, in identification with every detail of the body, then every detail of the body is functional. Thus, this jiva is not supported by the faculties. Jiva supports the faculties. Prananam dharayata. And then Bhagavan says, Tat prasiddhescha. This is how we experience. He doesn't say, this is what we understand. Bhagavan says, this is what is within our experience. If you have not understood it, you better understand. We don't refer to human understanding. We refer to human experience in the process of unfoldment of the truth. We don't refer to human understanding. We unfold the truth on the basis of the universal experience. If it is true that the sense organs and the brain supports the conscious being, then even independent of conscious being, they should be able to function. They should be able to function. But the faculties and the brain don't function at all, meaning the mind doesn't function at all. when there is no identification of the conscious being with the body. Therefore, there is manifestation not of consciousness, there is manifestation of identification with the conscious, with the body. We tend to say when the consciousness manifests, then the eyes and ears function. When the consciousness is not manifest, they don't function. We tend to think that way. But that's not within our experience. That's not what is Anubhava Siddham. It is what becomes manifest is the thought that I am, the equation with the form. Association with the form becomes manifest. Association with the, I'm using the word association in a very light way. Association with the form becomes manifest, association with the form becomes unmanifest. When the association with the form becomes unmanifest, these faculties are of no use. They are not there, there is zero. Therefore, because now you can't say when there is no association with the body, there is no consciousness, you can't say. Because that is not the experience. The experience is that one experiences the state of non-manifestation of association. It is our knowledge. Manifestation of association is universal knowledge, and its becoming unmanifest also is universal knowledge, means universal anubhava experience. That means consciousness alone has to illumine the manifestation of identification with the form, and the non-manifestation of identification with the form is known, and one can't doubt. The knowledge, one can't doubt one's experience pertaining to. One can't doubt one's experience pertaining to both the manifestation and non-manifestation, meaning the beginning and end. Beginning and end of the manifestation. The implication is enormous. Experiencing the beginning and end. The implication is not for a child to understand. It's not a baby stuff. Experiencing the beginning and end of thought implies that the one who experiences is eternal, is the truth. And therefore, Prasiddhi Shabda is given here. Bhagavan uses the word Prasiddhi in the sense of universal Anubhava. Anubhava. And therefore this clears one point, that faculties don't sustain consciousness, consciousness sustains faculties. Thought doesn't sustain consciousness, consciousness sustains thought. Thought doesn't sustain consciousness. Aram se sunu. Thought doesn't sustain consciousness, but consciousness sustains the thought. The error is that the thought sustains consciousness. The error is that the faculties sustain consciousness. The error is the body sustains consciousness. The error is the breath sustains consciousness. In fact, the faculties not only do not sustain consciousness. Did you hear the whole sentence? The faculties do not sustain not only consciousness, they don't even sustain the identification. In fact, identification sustains the faculties. Identification sustains the faculties, not faculties sustain identification. As regards sustaining consciousness, that's absolutely not true. They don't sustain consciousness. They don't even sustain identification. In fact, as long as there is identification, they function. When there is no identification, in one of the Upanishads it said, na pranena jivati, na panena, na cha itarena. You see, itarena tu jivanti. You see, it's not that really that man lives by breathing in, man lives by breathing out. In fact, breathing in and breathing out survive due to Atma, due to the Jiva, the Chetana. Prasiddhescha. This is the Anubhava. Anubhava here is not as per human understanding, Prasiddhi means what? As per human obtaining Anubhava. Obtaining universal experience. This is the Prasiddhi. Bhashyakara gives another logic. Nirvachanacha. That is the etymological sense of the word jiva. The etymological sense of the word jiva is conscious being. You don't relate yourself to the body. You relate yourself to the person, the conscious being. Minus that conscious being, just gone. Therefore, two things he gives. One is Anubhava, the other is the available etymological sense. Now, this kind of conscious being, if this is the definition of this person, Jiva, this is his nature, conscious being, the one who is the light of the whole universe. Because the physical light, conscious being, physical light is not the light for consciousness. In fact, even physical light is known to conscious being. It is peculiar. See. See, the eyes use the glasses to see. That doesn't mean what aids the eyes is greater than the eyes. The glasses aid the eyes, all right. Now, because the glasses aid the eyesight, doesn't mean they become more luminous than eyesight. In that manner, as an individual using the eyes, using the body, I may be using the sunlight to see the form. That doesn't mean sunlight is brighter than the one who sees. Like the glasses are not brighter than the eyesight. Glasses are not brighter than eyes. In that manner, the sunlight can't be brighter than the seer. Therefore, this kind of conscious being, the light of the whole existence. If you think that the material for the universe is pradhanam, the inert matter, and the Shruti says the very material for the universe, the very source of the universe, the very source of the universe enters the body as the observer of the universe. The very material for the universe becomes, material means the very source of the universe. Tat srishtva tadeva anupravishat, having created the universe, itself enters the body. If the inert matter created the world, then the inert matter as inert matter has to enter the body. But here the one who has entered the body is a conscious being. Who is this conscious being? The creator of the universe, the source of the universe has entered the body. Enters the eyes and ears as the light of the universe. The material of the universe becomes the illuminer or the perceiver or the observer of the universe. So if Pradhanam is the inert Pradhanam were the source, then Pradhanam cannot enter the body as a conscious being. So if you are making your arguments on the basis of the Shruti, then you are wrong. Supposing you base your arguments, either you should base your arguments purely on sense perception based logic. If you base your arguments on the scripture, then what you say should be the topic of the scripture. What you say should conform to what it says. So what you are saying, your statement that the inert Pradhanam is the source of the world is not really testified, is not substantiated by the scripture, because the scripture says the very source became the Atma, the very source became the person. And if you withdraw your arguments from the scripture, meaning you don't want to, because anyway you don't accept Vedanta as a pramanam, you don't accept Shabda as a pramanam, you are a logician. As a logician, you have to actually depend upon sense perception, sense data based logic. And if you argue only on the basis of the sense data, then you can't talk about Jagat Karana. See? Big point, Ji, if you have heard. If you are talking only on the basis of sense data, you lose the right to talk about Jagat Karanam, because sense data cannot help you to arrive at the source of the universe. So you can't talk about Jagat Karanam. And therefore here he says, the next line, Saha Katham Achetanasya Pradhanasya Atma Bhavet. This conscious being, who is the light of lights, he is the light of the light. Light of the light means light of the physical light. He is the light of the light. The light of the sun, light of the moon, light of what man thinks the light. That conscious being, Katham, how? Achetanasya, the Pradhanam, the inert, Atma Bhavet, how can it be the nature? How can the conscious self be the nature of the inert Pradhanam? Because you have already said, Pradhanam by nature is inert. Like fire is by nature hot. The word nature is different, because this particular word, Swarupam, one has to dwell on that word for some time. What does it convey? Nature. Nature is something which can't change. That's called nature. Like fire as a fire has to be hot. It can't be fire and still be cold. Fire, the identity, the fire as fire is always hot. It can't change its nature. That's why we always give this example. To be hot is the nature of fire. To be accommodative, space as space, is by nature accommodate. Of the objects, it accommodates. Because air doesn't accommodate, fire doesn't accommodate, water doesn't accommodate, earth doesn't accommodate. Therefore, when you are buying property, you are buying space. Why? Because the earth doesn't accommodate. Earth is accommodated. Earth is accommodated by space. Water, the oceans are accommodated. Fire is accommodated. Air is accommodated. The accommodator is only space. So to accommodate is the nature of space. Now it can't be physical space and yet not accommodate. That is its nature, not its guna. It is not its quality. And we see no difference, we club quality and nature. This is the problem. That's why it is always better to get the meanings of the terminology right. That's called paribhasha jnana. Studying Vedanta involves fixing, understanding the sense in which a given word is used. Like when I say quality, quality can change. Like the body, it is young now, that is its quality, and after some time the youth goes and old age becomes another quality. Qualities can change. But the body is by nature changing. It is not body's quality to change, but it is body's nature to change. If it is the body's quality to change, then the quality to change can change, meaning the body may stop to change. Aisa hoga? This is how big a difference. Therefore, we can't use the word guna for swarupa. Swarupa means nature. Swarupa means nature. So that it is infancy is a quality of the body. Infancy cannot be the nature of the body. Adulthood is a quality of the body, not the nature of the body. Old age is the quality of the body, but not the nature of the body. Then what is its nature? Keep changing. Bas. Keep changing. Keep changing is the nature of the body. And that changing nature can't change. What? That is its nature. Therefore, by definition, what is pradhana? You have already defined. Defining means defining the nature. Definition means defining the nature. Defining is not giving a list of the qualities. No, that's not a definition. When you define a tree, we give a list of all its qualities. That is really empirical definition, the known definition of a tree. A very important, if you can follow. If a botanist, you see, botanical literature would define a tree in terms of its properties. And you can't call it a definition. You can't call it the definition of its nature. That is only a description of its qualities. The nature is that it is. It has a beginning, it has an end. It appears and disappears, which can't change. When it is there, it is changing, and ultimately it disappears in Sushupti and reappears, which we call waking. Disappears, which we call Sushupti. Therefore, that it has a beginning, that it has an end, and during its stay, it goes through changes. That becomes its nature, because that it begins cannot change, that it is subject to end can't change, and that during its stay it's going through parinama can't change. That it is srishti, that it is a creation, and that it has laya can't change. That means non-eternity becomes its nature. Non-eternity becomes its nature. Non-eternity in its... And you can also define it objectifiable. That is its nature. Because a tree as a tree can never change its nature of being available for objectification. It's its nature. I hope I have conveyed the difference between qualities and nature. Now you have already defined pradhanam as inert, as its nature. It is inert by nature, and you have also said it has three gunas, and sattva-guna, rajoguna, tamo-guna, and all of them are inert. And you have also said it is by nature subject to change. And you have also said that it is subject to change and become the inert world. Now this pradhanam, which is inert by nature, how can it enter the body as Atma, the conscious? Because the one who is aware of the world is conscious by nature. Because consciousness is not our guna. If it is guna, I can develop it, I can lose it. Consciousness is not our quality. Consciousness is not our property. Consciousness is our nature. There is a big unfoldment in seeing the difference between the two. Properties can be lost. Properties can be made. We make properties, we lose properties. Really. The body develops new properties. It develops, it loses old properties. But nature can't go. Therefore, that we are conscious is not one of our properties, nor is it our sole property. That we are conscious is our nature. And if consciousness is our nature, then it can't be lost. That's why we use the word Atma Atma for consciousness because the word Atma etymologically means Swarupam, nature. Greenness cannot be the Atma of the tree. Greenness is a guna of the tree. You have to follow it. Greenness is not the Atma of the tree. Greenness is not the Atma of the tree. Greenness is the guna, dharma, the property of the tree. Can change. In that manner, consciousness is not our quality. We can't simply say consciousness is our quality. Consciousness is not our quality. What is intimate is nature. Properties are not intimate. To be intimate means to be synonymous with one's existence. To be inseparable from one's existence. To be inseparable from one's being. And therefore, hey Purvapakshi, Siddhanti asks a question. Now please tell me one thing. Sa katham acetanasya pradhanasya Atma bhavet. How can this conscious being be the nature of the inert pradhana? How can consciousness be the nature of pradhanam, which is inert by nature? पागल नहीं हो तो पागल हो जाएगा. Saying, consciousness is the nature of pradhanam, which is inert by nature. I say, if it is inert by nature, then how can it enter the body? As consciousness. Therefore, the Shruti's statement that Srishtva Tadeva Anupramishat, God having created the universe, God having become the universe, God having looked the universe, that is the Tatparyam. God having looked the universe, God looking the universe, Himself enters the body and looks at the universe. God looking the universe, Himself enters the body and looks at the universe. The dreamer having become the dreamt, having created the dream, it's actually having become the dreamt, or having looked the dream, having looked the dreamt world, himself looks on at the world. You see? And therefore, going by the Shruti Vakya, one thing is clear, that the source of the universe can never be inert. If you base your arguments on the Shastra. If you go by Shastram, the source of the universe cannot be inert. If you go by merely logic, you lose. You forfeit the right to talk about the source of the world. Why? Because sense data based logic is not the pramanam to find out Jagat Karan. You can't infer. You can't infer Jagat Karan. Neither we can infer, just we can't guess that matter is the source of the world, nor can we guess that some consciousness is the source of the world. Whatever be that source, it can't be guessed by sense data based logic. Can't be guessed. And therefore, the next sentence, Na chetanasya pradhanasya chetano jivaha swarupam bhavitum arhati. The next sentence. Athatu. But now another stand is taken. Siddhanti takes another stand. Okay. Now, Chetanam Brahma, the unlimited conscious being, the conscious, infinite conscious being, because like consciousness is the nature of the conscious being. Consciousness is the very nature. And it is the nature of the consciousness to be unlimited. Understand? Like to be hot is the nature of the fire. Meaning there can't be fire without being hot. In that manner, it is the nature of consciousness to be unlimited. It is the nature of consciousness to be unlimited. You have to hear that. It is the nature of consciousness to be unlimited. It is not one of the gunas. You can't say now the quality of consciousness is limitation, and in time through sadhana it will change its quality and become unlimited. This has nothing to do with Vedanta, understand. We are defining consciousness is by nature unlimited. That means consciousness is by nature Brahma. Consciousness is by nature Brahma. Now, consciousness being unlimited by nature, even if that consciousness is viewed as confined to the body, it doesn't lose its nature of being unlimited. Did you hear the whole sentence? विश्वास नहीं होता है. Consciousness being unlimited by nature, even if it is viewed, because it can't become limited, and it can be viewed as limited, and even when it is viewed as confined to the body, it doesn't become limited. It continues to be unlimited because that happens to be its nature. Why? Because nature has no negation. Clear? And therefore, on that basis now Siddhanti argues. Athatu Chetanam Brahma, the conscious unlimited being, meaning consciousness. Consciousness, meaning the one conscious being. Mukhyam Ikshitru alone is the literal seer. Only consciousness is the literal seer. Meaning what? Not figurative seer. Eyes are not the literal seer. Eyes don't have the nature of being the seer. Eyes are a means to see a given form. Eyes don't facilitate seeing. Eyes only divide the form from the sound. It's a distorting. Eyes don't really facilitate the seeing, because seeing is the nature of the seer. Seeing is the nature of the seer. Seeing is the nature of the seer, and the nature is not facilitated. Therefore, we can't say eyes by nature see. Then what is it that is a literal seer? Only the seer is the literal seer, means Chetanam. The one who sees the waking, dream and sleep is the seer. Then what else? How else do you talk to a person? Swamiji, if you say eyes are not the seer, then who is the seer? Then what do you tell him? Tell me. Supposing you are in the place of a teacher, what will you tell him? He catches you by throat. Enough. The student catches the teacher by throat. If the eyes are not the seer, then who is the seer? Shastra says, the one who sees the waking dream under negation is the seer. That seer is not using eyes to see the three states. The seer of the three states is not using the eyes to see. The seer of the three states is not using any other pramanam to see the three states. Everybody's knowledge, everybody's experience. And therefore, here he says the literal, Mukhyam Ikshatyadhikaranam. Mukhyam means, literal. It's like, that the fire is hot is Mukhyam. And because of the proximity, because of the closeness with the fire, the water also becomes hot. Water on fire also becomes hot. But we say water is hot, but its being hot is not Mukhyam. Mukhya means that is not its nature. That word Mukhya means only nature. Fire is hot by nature, water is hot due to association with fire. Shastra is saying Brahman is the seer and he is seeing the sight of consciousness. The sight that man enjoys, the sight of the three states, which is the sight of the truth, the sight of the three states, the sight pertaining to the three states is the sight of the truth, and that is Mukhyam Ikshatyadhikaranam, that is a sight, which is not figurative but literal, meaning natural sight, it's nature. So, hey Purvapakshi, if we accept this stand that the literal sight belongs only to Brahman, literal sight doesn't belong to the inert, though figurative sight can belong to the inert. What is figurative sight? Oh, the sun is seeing you. Hey Rama, what a miserable figurative sight. This bank wants to fall, so you are ascribing want. Want. This tree is looking at you. These flowers are calling you. What are these? Figurative. Does it mean figurative sight does not mean thoda kam sight? Figurative sight means no sight, understand. In order not to hurt, in order not to insult these inert objects by telling them you are inert, we attribute some figurative sight. Therefore, the Mukhyam Ikshatyadhikaranam, the literal sight as the unnegatable nature can only belong to Brahman, the seer, the unlimited seer. Therefore, here Bhagavan says, Athatu Chetanam Brahma Mukhyam Ikshitru Parigrihyate. Parigrihyate means if it is accepted by you, if it is appreciated by you, that the literal sight, the sight as such belongs to the truth. Sight doesn't belong to the body. Sight doesn't belong to the eyes and ears. The sight doesn't belong to the thought. The sight only belongs to the truth, the sight of the seer. The Upanishad says, Nahi drashtuhu drishtehe viparilopo vidyate avinashitvat. Very beautiful statement. Hey, the sight of the seer has no negation, it says. The sight of the seer has no negation. Why? Avinashitvat. It is eternal. The sight of the seer has no, and the sight of the seer can never be eclipsed. Therefore, the darkness also falls within the sight. There is no darkness of the sight. There is sight of darkness, because darkness also is our knowledge anyway. Negation of the thought. Negation of the thought which we call darkness, that is also our sight. In fact, nothing can exist outside our sight. Nothing can exist outside the sight. Because there is no outside to the sight. There is no outside to the sight. And therefore, यदि ब्रह्मणः चेतनां चेतन ब्रह्मणः चेतनस्य ब्रह्मणः मुख्यम ईक्षितृत्वं परिगृह्यते, if it is accepted by you, then tasya, then of that Brahman, jiva vishayah, becoming jiva, atma shabda prayogaha, being described as Atma, Upapadyate is logically tenable. Then the Brahman becoming described as Atma is tenable. And the same Brahman entering the body as the observer of, as the seer of the whole existence is tenable. Because when Brahman entered the body as Brahman. How can the unlimited enter the body? Say the unlimited entering the body it's not like you are entering the house. It is like the water entering the wave, the space entering the pot. It is only to show. Because if consciousness is unlimited by nature, then it can't become limited or confined. It is only viewed. That getting viewed as the form is called entry. Getting viewed as the form is called entry. That's not the topic here. But who has entered the body? Has the matter entered the body? Has something inert entered the body, or has something conscious entered the body? Shruti says the source of the world has entered the body in the form of jiva. Jiva means chetanam. That means chetanam has entered the body as chetanam. In fact, the unlimited has entered the body as unlimited, though viewed as limited. But even when it is viewed as limited, it's not the loss of nature. Because once we define nature, that means it can't change. Like even when we mistake the rope for snake, then it can't say rope is rope. It can't, just because I view it as for snake, it doesn't become something else. Even if I think fire is cold, it doesn't become cold. Even if I think, ulta way, the earth accommodates, the air accommodates, the fire accommodates. All of them accommodate. In fact, they don't accommodate. They're all accommodated. Even if I think body accommodates consciousness, even if I think the senses accommodate consciousness, thoughts accommodate consciousness, but the truth is consciousness accommodates creation in it. And therefore there is no problem. Everything falls in its place. The flaws are all fixed. The flaws in our thinking are gone. If we think leisurely, correctly, analyze correctly, because all that is there in our hand is to investigate, to analyze, to look at our own anubhava more correctly. Now you just half-heartedly accept the Shastram. A bit of it you accept, the other bit you leave. It's like cutting a turkey, half of it for celebrating Christmas and the other half for laying eggs. You can't really cut a turkey to celebrate Christmas and the other part. In that matter, the Shastram, half of it you can't reject, means murder. Half of it you can't murder, and the other half you can't use it to establish your own theory. Therefore, if you go by the Shastra, then go by the entire topic. You have to look at Upakrama, Upasamhara, how it begins, how it goes through, how it unfolds and how it culminates. It is one statement. It is thousands of sentences, but all thousands of sentences form one statement. Scripture is one statement. You can't break a statement. You may break a statement into 1,000 sentences, but 1,000 sentences form one statement about the truth. It is ekavakyam. And out of that vakyam, a bit you accept and the other bit you leave, you can't. And therefore, hey Pradhanvadi, what you say that Pradhanami Jagat Karanam is not true. God is not inert. God is the seer of, the sight of the whole universe is God. The sight of waking, dream and sleep, the sight of life and death, the sight of time and its negation, the sight of thought and its negation, the sight alone is the truth. Call it the sight, call it the seer, that is the subject. Because we don't come across the sight as an object. This is the sight you don't say. Sight always belongs to oneself. Form, that is my sight. Sound, that is my sight. This universe, that is my sight. Dream, that's my sight. Their negation is my sight. That sight is another word for one's being, the subject, Atman. Therefore, your Pradhanvada it can't be proved. Then you can put a mark. The classes we are closing the classes on 3rd. As usual, a few days, just because it's cold also. And once in every January also thoda bahut ghum ke aayenge. And then we'll continue, we'll come back and continue. In the meantime, you can keep reflecting. And then we will not be having the next class. Therefore, wish you all a very, 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 very happy New Year. Let God be very kind. Ab apna, you can keep walking, long walks. चक्रवर्ती बनना नहीं है, 1000 साल जीना नहीं है, a few years and make the best of the life for understanding the truth. This running around in the creation is nothing. It's more it's a vikshepa. It's a distraction, not really any purposeful preoccupation. Distraction is not purposeful. Well, one can entertain oneself, one can live a normal life, but then that is a part of survival, all right. But really, the main thing is Shastram. Therefore, lay down and be reflective. That quiet reflectiveness creates interest in living. Quiet reflection about the truth creates really interest in living. Otherwise, life has no other interest. There is no other interest in it. Anyway, there can't be any other. That I want. In addition, that I want to be happy. In addition to the want to In addition to the want for happiness, there is nothing. You can't you can't entertain a second want. There is no want second to the want to fullness. There is no want second to the want for fullness. And that's the topic of the Shastra. Om Purnamadaha Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om.